Hey everyone, welcome. Today is Thursday. I am Nat, and today we are going to be looking at the psychology of living with ADHD. ADHD is a developmental condition. Who really cares about labels? What we're more interested in isn't about how it impacts people's day-to-day life. We are focusing in on ADHD, though, of course, all of these interconnect and interweave, so there will be a lot of overlap. Here's a picture of me again, just because I like my face. Who wouldn't? No, I have to, because other people think, who the hell is this geezer? Here's our team. Today we've got myself. We've also got Tim in the chat. Yay, Tim. But Tim stays hidden. We've also got our interns. And as I said, it is their last ever session with us. Tomorrow is our last day. We have April as well. You've got a lovely bunch today. It's a nice team. We're a social enterprise. We're expert-led. It's individuals who have lived experience. You've got a nice mix between lived experience, supporting people with ADHD each day, as well as having ADHD. Now, if any of you have wondered, where is Matt, our founder? I have no idea. He's flown the nest. He's around here somewhere. We had a nice team day today, and we got to meet all our new colleagues, which was quite nice. Psychology of living with ADHD. Remember, this isn't about necessarily ADHD today, it's the effects of living with ADHD. Psychology can sound like a bit of a scary word. Honestly, it's not. It just means observing behavior, essentially. What does it look like to live with ADHD? How does it feel like? How do we interpret it? If successful today, we're going to be doing the following. We're going to be giving a nice overview of psychology. We're going to look about empathy in ADHD. How can we understand ADHD if we don't have ADHD? It's difficult, but analogies, metaphors, there's things that can arguably help illuminate it for us. We've got building resilience, because while we do talk about all the positives of ADHD all the time, I know guys, it was nothing impressive what I just showed you, never mind. While we often talk about the benefits of ADHD, there are challenges. Those challenges are difficult. How do you overcome those challenges to get stronger from the perseverance and determination? We're going to look about how it might affect us in the workplace, a couple of strategies to help us get by, a nice bit of self-care. Because having to get super resilient all the time, it does have a bit of a knock-on effect. We want to be able to keep up that good noggin. Here's a little image just to make sure we're all on the same page. What is ADHD? ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition which essentially can impact your life in multiple ways. There are 3 varieties, from inattentive, could be like restless, struggling to concentrate, to hyperactivity, impulsivity. And then you have the combined. We have a little bit of that, a little bit of both. Just to make sure that I'm not talking absolute gobbledygook to all of you, is executive functioning. Nice and simple. It just means mental skills for planning and impulse control. So think of your brain like a little gear. It's the gear spinning around, making sure everything is working at the right time and pace and process that it's supposed to. Then we've got neurotransmitters. While this isn't really that much about psychology, more of neuroscience, it's worth noting that the reason why our behavior and our mood look so different to those who are neurotypical is related to neurotransmitters. Essentially, the chemicals in our head. Too many, too little, not enough, not working correctly. Impulsivity is quick reactions without considering outcomes. We're very reckless. Did you know people who have ADHD are more likely to have injuries than other people? Have any of you broken a leg, an arm, twisted something, sprained something? Attention span is how long you can remain focused without distraction, hence why I made today interactive. I know my audience. Then we've got behavioral therapy, treatment to change disruptive behavior. There is no cure for ADHD. There are medications which can suppress some of the effects of it. You're not getting rid of it. There is also behavioral treatment. Yes, Tim, neurotransmitters do also have an impact on memory. Essentially, neurotransmitters do everything. It's the telephone line in your head. If you've got a dodgy telephone line, your signal's not going to get there as clear. The message isn't going to be as well received. We've got cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. This is just another way which is often used to support ADHD. However, you do want to make sure it's aimed at ADHD, otherwise it might not be as effective. Mindfulness is just essentially being present in the moment and being able to understand what you're going through. This is like self-empathy, adaptive strategies, methods to handle challenges, and last but certainly not least, neurodiversity, which is the umbrella of thinking different. Ooh, LaDonna says always injured. Went to shower last night and found scratches. I don't remember giving them to myself. Honestly, I'm always in with bruises. I call them like little kind of war wounds or medals. I didn't do anything to deserve them though. Oh, Sam says, is impulsivity because we aren't good at connecting behavior to consequences? Or is it separately caused and just adds to our impulsivity? So it's a little bit of both, Sam. Good question. If we're going into like the neurotransmitters, remember it's about essentially we've got cables in our heads and they send signals to each other. If those signals aren't working, let's see if you're driving a car and there's a big stop sign, you stop the car. Imagine you're driving the car and you don't see the stop sign, you're going to keep on going. It's about how the brain talks to each other. Oh, as far as I am, UK ADHD is assessed and diagnosed at the earliest age 6. In Denmark, it is diagnosed as early as 6 months. A child's first birthday. Why such a big difference? That is a good question. I wouldn't know, but I would want, for me to answer that question, I would want to know, does the Denmark also use the ICD in terms of how they diagnose ADHD? Also, do you have more qualified professionals in ADHD? I would say often, because we use psychology, ADHD is more obvious in young children, whereas it's still noticeable at, say, 3 years old. It's a good question, though. I would like to find out the answer to it. Oh, or we see the sign, the stop sign. We don't see why we would need to stop as there aren't any other cars around. So we drive through, a car comes out of nowhere. Also a good analogy, Sam. It is true. The exact reason why we choose not to stop varies a lot. Whether it's inattentive, hyperactivity, impulsivity, we're still driving that car. Or we didn't even get in the car because we're late. Now, here's a quote which I think encapsulates psychology and ADHD quite well. Smooth seas don't make the skillful sailors. What this is saying is when people ask, why is ADHD a strength if it sounds so bloody difficult and negative? In order to get good at something, you've got to have some perseverance. Imagine a sailor that has never been on dangerous or rough seas. They're probably not going to be that good. When we overcome challenges, it is absolutely essential for developing that resilience and growth. Let's say this a little image. We've got someone who doesn't have ADHD. They're like, why can't you flip and do anything? And someone with ADHD is, mate, if you knew I'm literally lacking the steps that you use to get up in life, I can get up those steps. It's going to take me a lot longer. I tell you, I'm going to be far better at climbing than you ever will. So those with ADHD typically struggle much more in earlier life. When they get over those initial massive steps, things tend to be easier. I'm not saying it's perfect. If you compare ADHD from when you were a child to as an adult, they normally tend to soften a little bit. Or other areas. You can call me up on that if you think that's not true. I'm good at having ADHD. So what is psychology? It's a study of how we think, how we act, including our conscious and unconscious feelings and thoughts. Why do we do what we do? And how do we see what we do? It's essentially everything which is the consequence of an action, a condition, a development, those sorts of things. When you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, essentially they're taking this muddled up mind and they are unweaving it in order to break it down so it is easier to read. That's what we're doing today. We just want to untangle the ADHD brain so we can read it better, not change it, just understand it. Oh, Tim says, as Nat was saying, impulsivity can be an inherent trait, not automatically triggered by a lack of sense of consequences. No sense of consequences can encourage impulsive behavior. Thanks, Tim. Yes, Sam says autism gets harder. You know what, Sam? I'm with you on that in some ways, because when you're younger, people can just pass it off. Oh, kids being kids. When you get older, maybe you are held to a higher account. On the other hand, maybe you understand yourself better. I think it can go both ways. Now, ADHD, just so we are all on the same page, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. A lot of the characteristics of ADHD, anyone can have, but in order to have ADHD, you have to be diagnosed because it is a condition that disrupts functioning. You can resonate with ADHD, order, it's a disorder, which means different from the ordinary. Hyperactivity, you don't have to have, it's always in the name. A deficit does mean you have to have a lack of something. Typically, it's the lack of attention. The name is quite self-explanatory, and then from there, you need follow-on discussions. As mentioned, ADHD is split into three places, or kind of three subcategories. You've got the inattentive, which is how ADHD often presents itself in adults, because you might struggle with focus, attention, you might be a little bit more head in the clouds. Or you've got the alternative where you could talk for England, no one can stop you, you've always got energy, you're the life of the party, then you crash at night time. Or you might have a little bit of both. With most of these neurodevelopmental hickey ding dongs, it's somewhere in between, it's a spectrum. Just because you might be diagnosed with A, B, or C doesn't mean that you might be here or some days might be there. It can very much vary. If you aren't disabled by the condition, you wouldn't be diagnosed, even though you could have it, because you've got from the neurological perspective where people with ADHD have differently wired brains. From that perspective, you have ADHD or you don't have ADHD. From a psychiatry perspective, it's only really if you're running into difficulties or challenges. Oh, the doctor says, I feel like more likely to get ostracized by being autistic as an adult because the neurotypical people learn a sense of importance and hierarchy by the time they get older. Many people possess ADHD, express that their compulsive behavior is internal, i.e. they are hyperactive. People can't tell by viewing their external behavior. That's another good point, Tim. We often think of hyperactivity as an external facing thing. I like to see it as like a hamster on a wheel. Your mind is going, it is running the circuits. It doesn't mean it has to show that way. Oh, is there a relationship between ADHD and difficulties/challenges in energy management? Yes, there is. For instance, the brain produces dopamine and absorbs dopamine and does stuff with dopamine throughout the day. Some parts of the day easier than others. Some activities use more of it, other activities use less. Depending on your unique characteristics, you'll find that some days you are lacking energy, other times you have an abundance of it. It's why you don't want to assume that someone with ADHD is always running at a 10. They are more likely to dip up and down. I'm loving all the comments today, everyone. Lovely stuff. Let's go even deeper down this rabbit hole. Look at how ADHD even became the thing. You've got two things. Bear in mind, we still don't know. We've got the external influences. We've got environmental, you've got your family, you've got your school, you've got your society, your culture. They don't necessarily give you ADHD. They definitely can make it worse, or they can make it more prevalent, or like the challenges more difficult. Then we've got neurotrauma. Now, neurotrauma essentially is neuro, brain, trauma, a bit like head injury. It could be an injury, it could be damage. I know what you're thinking. I thought ADHD is neurodevelopmental. It is. You could say those who have had head injuries are more likely to develop ADHD. Whether this is essentially awakening something which has already been there or creating it, the jury is still out. It's looking more like it was already there. Then you've got the genetic angle, which is the neurochemical changes. You know how we talked about these neurotransmitters? Essentially, it could be dopamine. There are other chemicals as well. They go up and down. They fluctuate throughout the day. When they're really high, maybe you're like buzzing. When they're really low, maybe you're struggling to focus and concentrate. This is why ADHD can affect you in many different ways. We've also got the chromosomal changes, your DNA, your genes, how they're different. This is why everyone with ADHD is unique, because on a chromosomal level, no one with ADHD is exactly the same. That is why it's so difficult to understand ADHD. It's not like looking at a needle in a haystack. It's like looking at a haystack made out of 100% needles and trying to find out which needle is yours. What is more important is understanding about how it manifests, how it shows itself. This is the result of whatever caused your ADHD. How it shows itself is what we're going to be looking at today. This is psychology. It could be anxiety or depression. It could be learning difficulties or challenges or delays in school. It could be difficulties with social interactions, making friends, relationships, maintaining them. As I said earlier, you could also have increased injuries because of that impulsivity and complex behaviors. ADHD can affect people in many different ways, and the manifestations is what we're going to be looking at today. Sam says, is ADHD the same as autism, where it is a product of over pruning, which doesn't happen in utero, but the code for it is always there? Do you know what, Sam? Interesting question. What you mean by pruning is in the brain, we have loads of synapses. We've got our cables in our brains, and they have kind of like splurly bits, and the brain will prune them. Our brain naturally gets rid of brain cells because redundant, not very helpful, where we find those with autism are less likely to prune those brain cells. And you think more brain cells better. Not necessarily, because where the brain is putting its energy into redundant ones, not that helpful. ADHD does have similarities. As to it being exactly the same, I don't think so. I don't know 100%. Good question, Sam, on that. All right, ADHD, we are more focused on how it demonstrates, more interested on how it feels to have ADHD. Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and having an idea of what it is like to be them. When we think of ADHD, often it's a squirrel. That's not very great. It is an analogy. We want to find, or a metaphor, you've got to find that sweet spot between being helpful in illustrating what it is without being overly complicated. We've got little off and on switches. I like to explain ADHD as being a light switch opposed to a dimmer. If you've got a dimmer, you can say, I want it a little bit bright, a little bit dim. You can choose the intensity on how you display that light. Where with ADHD, it's either on or you struggle with the middle ground. You're either really orderly or absolutely chaotic. Your emotions are sky high or you might feel really low. Impulsivity might be like, let's drive that car right now. Or it might be like, I don't want to do it today. You could be really focused or disinterested. You struggle to find that sweet spot. Of course, hyperfocus is great. The switch isn't always going to be on. Some days it's going to be off. You let me know, is this a good analogy for ADHD? Is it too simplistic? Is it too detailed? Yes, Sam, it can go both ways. Oh, I am all or nothing. Oh, yes, Laura, I think it's a good analogy. This is good because you can't accumulate everyone's experience into one thing. If you didn't have ADHD and you saw this, you might start to understand why things can be difficult. My cousins have ADHD, right? And they are so loud. And then other times I can't hear them. I'm like, there's no point in me trying to make you do a switch that you're not able to do. Oh, okay, most of you are liking it, which is nice. The next one for an analogy, in psychology, analogies simplify and clarify complex conditions. When I was talking about neurons and brain cells and synapses, I don't expect any of you to know what those are. That's why I say cables, because that is something that we use every single day. We can make a connection. Here is another analogy, is that someone says, ADHD feels like my brain has too many open tabs. This is something we can all understand, right? On our computer, when we have too many tabs, it slows the computer down. That is just how we work. Is a similar analogy, maybe one that people who use computers might be more able to resonate with. I want to hear from all of you. What are some other analogies, other ways that we can bring people along the journey? Because your ADHD is different from your ADHD, which is different from your ADHD. Help us out. If you were to summarize what you feel it is like compared to something else in life, help. We've got my brain works faster than I do. I think you could have a nice little analogy of my brain is like Usain Bolt and I'm like an Oompa Loompa. Having a Ferrari engine with bicycle brakes, yes, I always like that one. That's a really classic one. I would have made an image of that, but I didn't really know how to draw it. We've got sometimes I have blinders on. Yes, I use that one a lot for autism actually, because you're either hyper focused on something or completely oblivious to things around you. Julia says, I have around 50 computer tabs open right now. This is because I don't see it if it doesn't exist. Oh God, I feel sorry for your computer. Tim says, a dice to represent the seemingly randomness of emotional deregulation. Some people also state that it goes in circles for them. Maria says, my thoughts are, the hole in the pinball machine, too easily distracted by flashy lights and noises. Or the ball. Yeah, I got that. We got brain, fast brain until fuel runs out. So yeah, kind of petrol, everything everywhere at once, except creativity, ideas, forgetfulness, like having 1,000 post-it notes flooding in my head. These are great analogies. Having many things you need to do and things you want to do, not knowing how to prioritize it, like a kid at a birthday party, not sure where to start with the sweets, don't want to forget anything. When I go to a sweet shop, I'm dribbling and I just don't know where to move first. I remember when I was at Disneyland, when I was like 10, I just froze and started crying. I was so overwhelmed and my brain didn't know where to go. You got like having 1,000 post-it notes, yeah, flood in my head. I really like that one. My thoughts are like shooting stars going in different directions, and I have to figure out which one I can catch. Maybe in a similar analogy, like when I see butterflies, I want to catch them all. I'm busy thinking about which ones I want. I end up losing all of them. Ultimately, you shouldn't catch butterflies. I've got like herding cats, not easy. Yeah, these are all really great ways. Now, obviously, you run the risk of oversimplifying it. This is why, as long as we're careful with our language, we're able to bring it. If I told everyone about the science behind ADHD, most people lose interest after the first few seconds. If I bring that visual image of the post-it notes in the brain, this kind of gives people like, you know what? I resonate. I have felt that way in my life at one time or another. You're telling me you feel that way all the time. Of course, that must be difficult. Moving on to a little bit more detail. How does ADHD affect you or others' attention and behavior? We really want to focus on the output. What are particular examples where it impacts you? Because these analogies, they normally focus on what I call like the tip of the iceberg. When we think of ADHD, we think of hyperactivity, we think of impulsivity, we think of inattention. We all know it has way more beneath the surface. There's co-occurring conditions which can make things more complicated. Low self-esteem, which means you're less likely to go for activities that you may would otherwise. Sleep issues, sensory processing, attention variability, emotional regulation. And as we talk about mood, we've got being a bit of a drama queen, being forgetful, interrupting others, extremely emotional, incapable of adulting, can't switch off to struggle to sleep, sometimes prevents me from keeping on task, impulsive spending. Yep, that is a big one that doesn't get enough attention. Can't focus and easily, strong sense of justice and fairness. And that's another good one that doesn't get talked about much. No concept of time. Or Julia says, does anyone else lose the ability to speak properly, type or write when the exhaustion kicks in? Usually following a period of hyperfocus. Honestly, Julia, that is really classic. People have started to realize, oh, hyperfocus, I love that. They don't tend to cater for when you do have that kind of dip. Both parts of ADHD, you can't get rid of one, just have the part of it that you like. Sam says ADHD is getting hit with anxiety. A thought you had that flashed in your head so quickly that you didn't see it, or if you did, you don't remember. And no, I like what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, we've got difficulty managing focus with long meetings. It's a sprint, not a marathon. Tangible tasks which I complete urgently are better, else I get bored, wiped out focus. Sprint, essentially lots of breaks will make it a sprint rather than a marathon, which is just knuckling down and getting on with it. We've got consistently knowing why I'm doing something because I forgot. Everyone, these are really great. Honestly, I did an activity with the team the other day. I wish I had you all on my team. That's all I'll say. Goes at reaction work, but rupture routine, often goes off topic. I once suspected that someone I knew had ADHD because I spoke to them about swimming. They thought I spoke about gymnastics, for example. Hyperfocus and impulsivity. Okay, nice. Now, if you go to the stereotypical ones, all you need to do here is select the ones. Hopefully you can select more than one. If not, just select the one that affects you the most in terms of how ADHD affects you. Because again, if we say ADHD, people just assuming it's either one thing or they assume it's everything. We all have a different spiky profile, things that we're really good at, things we're not so good at. Our profiles are individual. We also need to appreciate that people aren't one-dimensional creatures. We're multifaceted. We have multiple angles and perspectives. We have co-occurrence, comorbidity. For instance, ADHD, very closely related to ADHD, but also closely related to autism. That can also relate to specific learning difficulties or sleep disorders or depression. When we say ADHD, you can't separate one from the other. I'm assuming this means that you could select multiple. The most popular one, though, is concentration. The least popular is reading and writing and self-expression. As you can see, reading and writing, you assume that's dyslexia. it can still affect your concentration and engagement with reading and writing. While the reason why the difficulty is different, ultimately the outcome is the same. The outcome is, again, what I would say is probably most important. Let's look a little bit now at ADHD resilience. Oh, Emma says, sense of direction. I'm like a home pigeon. Me too. So I can always get home. Doesn't mean I know how to get there. Me and Tim found ourselves lost the other day. We're in this dark crack alley. I did not feel safe. Thankfully, one of us got home. Some say he's still there. ADHD resilience is about how we persevere. Despite all these challenges, how do we keep getting punched? No, how about the Rocky quote? It's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That, I think, is ADHD. We are looking about how do we get stronger as a result of it rather than pushing us back. On here, all I want you to do is move these up in terms of what you think is the most importance for building resilience, and then number one for the least importance. Oh, Tim likes the alley. I thought you lived there now. Maybe you were there to begin with. Friends got make connections. Would that help resilience? View challenges as being manageable. Embrace change. Set realistic goals. What out of these, from a mindset perspective, is going to allow you to keep going with ADHD? Oh, Emma says, my email signature states failure lies not in falling down. Failure lies in not getting up again. Yours sounds far more poetic. However, I'm a sucker for the Rocky franchise. I've come along to understand my children. I have all of those symptoms. It's interesting, Sarah, because that is how a lot of people find out about diagnosis, because it is hereditary. It does run in families. Adults are less likely to have a diagnosis compared to their child counterpart. Oh, Daniela says, hi, Nat. Not sure if you saw my question. Here it is. Do individuals with ADHD also have a higher chance of being more anxious? Yes, they absolutely do. Anxiety, depression, all of those things go in. But yeah, definitely. Let's see what we've got. We've got view challenges as being measurable, something that can be overcome. Set realistic goals. Yep, nice smart goals, as they say. Specific, measurable, accurate. Something about smartness. Embrace changes, make connections. These are all really great ways. I think it will determine whether or not you become successful with ADHD or if you become one of the standard statistics. Here are some others. We've got self-discovery. This is knowing yourself better. This is a lifelong journey, one which you have to take the ownership of. We've got positive self-view, looking at yourself like, you know what? Yeah, I might suck at a few things. I am bloody good at all of these things. And having some self-respect and self-love for you. Maintaining perspectives. Is it really that important? Is this really changing my life? We make mistakes. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Hopeful outlook, positivity. I do know a lot of people with ADHD tend to be quite positive people. Whether or not that's just outward facing, I can't see inside the head. Sam says, isn't the definition of resilience the ability to handle change? Or am I thinking of something else? I think it depends on where you get your definitions from. But I thought resilience was more about the friction of life, being able to keep going forward. I could see, adaptability. There's a lot of overlap. All right, Mel, we're doing good. Let's look at workplace ADHD. If we look at some nice stats, we've got, do you think your ADHD has ever contributed to any of the following? A lot of people have said receiving a negative performance, being passed over. Okay, basically, a lot of people think ADHD is the exact reason why work ain't going great for them, or how people support or react. That's something that I think we probably need to dive in a little bit deeper. Have any of you had any challenges at work which you deem are contributed or relate to ADHD? Okay, a lot of people said they have missed deadlines before, had to work late on the weekend to catch up, had an argument with a coworker or supervisor, missed a social event to finish work, duplicating work that has already been done. I've done that a lot of times. Yeah, keep them coming in, everyone. We've got change, set connections too fast. Oh God, many. I just realized I haven't stopped to breathe for like a couple of minutes. Yeah, I needed some of that. Procrastination, being able to concentrate, overly conscious, boredom, poor work-life balance, oversharing, being disliked, job interviews, unable to use to-do lists. There are lots of challenges. These are all things which we need to find ways of managing, overcoming, contextualizing. It's a thing. How do I make sure it doesn't define me and doesn't limit me? Simple tasks feel daunting and get pushed back unnecessarily. Yet I can see a lot of these things are called anxiety. A lot of these would make anyone anxious. Let's face it, this stuff's a little bit of a Debbie Downer, not the most kind of empowering thing for our Thursday. What can we do to help? Now, in terms of how we get information across, do you think that any of these would be useful, like visual aids, interactive media, audio content, simplified text? I put these here because when we think of reasonable adjustment, we typically think of dyslexia, which is there's so many things that can help with dyslexia. With ADHD, it's either do some therapy, take some medication. Are there other things that can help navigate? Interactive media, yeah, I find that works. More visual aids like images, infographics, audio content, having text that gets right to the point. Remember, we're not talking about dumbing things down. We're just saying get to the point quicker, rather than going a long way around it. Here are some management strategies which are a little bit more holistic. You let me know. Do these actually work for you, or do you just ignore them anyway? We've got, I believe, stretching, a nice bit of exercise. We've got some organizing, trying to keep your life manageable, breathing exercises. We've got better time management, I would say. We've got quitting the sugar, the smoking, the alcohol, or being able to have honest, fruitful conversations. These are all nice and simple things everyone can do. Breathing does help. When I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to cover my mouth like I'm about to cough because it looks a bit odd. If I'm on the train, I go, finding ways of regulating. Oh, we got yes. I'm never giving up the wine and fags. All right, Emma, whatever works for you. It would be said, though, that those with ADHD are more likely to have a more addictive personality. I would recommend not starting if you haven't started yet. Interesting to know, what do all of you think about the new laws coming in the UK where every single year you are going to be stopped from smoking? That's going to be interesting if that goes ahead. What can we do to get a bit more focused and to help our strategies? Would any of these be helpful? For instance, having key concepts. I don't want all the information. Just give me the top line, the headline, rather than all the nitty gritty. Essentially, has anyone ever read the terms and conditions of their phone contract ever? We've got highlighting, for instance, making things bold, making things stand out. The eyes is able to glance and absorb quickly. Also, multimedia, using pictures, images, sound, video, rather than just non-stop bullet points. Now on here, this shows you how while ADHD affects people differently, there are two predominant ways we use to support focus. One is the pharmaceutical intervention. These are all the type of medications which are typically recommended for those with ADHD. There's also the more holistic approach like exercise, medication, mindfulness. I am not a doctor, okay? It's not for me to tell you which one to do. However, I have seen that the best approach from my personal perspective is a combination of both tends to work better than relying purely on one or the other. So of course, speak to your doctor. Not yoga or meditation or mindfulness. Legalizing serotonin is a necessity, by the way. Happy hormones help with being able to take the medication. I often say sometimes medication can be quite useful to get you on the right path. Imagine your train has fallen off the rails. Medication gets you back on the rails. Then once you're chugging along, then you can come off of it. Then holistic approaches just keep you going. What about in meetings? What would help? What wouldn't help? We've got engaging activities. Would that help? Or would you be like cringe? Clear agendas, knowing exactly what's going on? Or do you prefer not to run things by the minute? Do you like knowing when breaks are happening? Or do you like are we going to have 5 minutes or not? Flexible attendance. Would you prefer it if you could attend online, offline, recording options? Should meetings be recorded or not? If they're recorded, some people can feel a bit uneasy. If they are recorded, people can go back and redigest information later. Even neurotypical people digest images/icons quicker than text. And all the adjustments which would benefit someone who is neurodivergent would also benefit someone who is neurotypical. It's just the quantity of how much it benefits someone might vary. Instead of clear agendas, there needs to be a clear goal. As always, I'm again awfully passionate. This is all about looking after yourself. I'm not your doctor. I'm not going to tell you to not smoke or drink, but if you can, do try and get some good sleep. Do have a nice diet. Do stay social, communicate, look after self, get some nature, ask for help, have a set of principles and values, and remember to have pleasure. All the things that we're told to do all the time. There's a reason we're told to do them. And before you jump right to the maybe medical interventions, looking at the holistic approaches first can be a really quick fix for some people. The longer you leave your life without any of these, the harder it is going to be for them to make a noticeable difference quickly. Yeah, it is hard to do. I ain't saying any of these are easy. I think I'm definitely drowning sometimes. I'm not very good at exercising. I'm terrible at mindfulness. I wish I went outdoors more. I did. I'm not saying I'm following by example here. These are the things that we should try to do if we can. So for exercise, just want to know, do any of you do like team sports or yoga, or are there any other types? They often say that, again, I don't know the exact stat. Isn't it something along the lines 60% diet and 40% exercise is what you need for a healthy lifestyle? Now, those with ADHD, we know struggle with sleep. Exercise can be difficult for motivation or going too far. For me, I spend every single day exercising and then I'm dead for a month. It's not the most sustainable approach. Oh, HIIT helps a little. Do you know that high intensity interval training? I only just found out about that. I'm not sure my little heart could keep up with that. I like it. Never team sports or yoga. I'm not a team sports kind of guy. I'm not a yoga person. I don't want to go on long walks like jogs around the park. I can do about 2 laps and then I'm on the floor. Still, you got to start somewhere. What about sleeping? Do you get enough sleep? Imagine a car. Further, ADHD is less like a car, less like a train, more like a shark. Sharks aren't able to stop swimming. They stop swimming, they die. With ADHD, your mind is always busy. And it does mean that your sleep is less effective. Where the average person might say, what is it, like 8 hours sleep? Someone with ADHD easily do 10 hours. That's not them being lazy. It's because their brain needs that additional time to rest, recover, rejuvenate. Or go, I never get enough sleep. Quick check-in. Are you okay? And the reason I ask this is you need to do these daily check-ins. If you need to be able to spot the signs when you're going on a bit of a down spiral, your friends and family are probably the best bet. They are the ones who know you better than you often. Try to do it yourself if you can. Do know that if you go onto the ADD Tude, it's like a magazine, they have lots of ideas for mindfulness and exercise, which is aimed at those with ADHD. And what I also spoke about, knowing yourself better, knowing when you're struggling, that's a really key thing. For instance, if you're public speaking, writing emails, reporting data, whatever you're doing in life, if you know that these could be triggering or offer more challenges, this is when you need to start intervening. You need to do it before you've reached crisis point. Again, it's not simple because for me, is it ADHD? Is it dyslexia? It's hard to say. Kim says, I know people who have said that they need to start going to sleep from 7 in order to wind down and get enough sleep without getting up late. Yeah, I need a solid hour winding down and an hour getting up in the morning. I don't know about this blue light stuff. On your phones, there is normally a button which can limit the blue light, which hits your eyes, which apparently stops you from going to sleep as easy. You can also turn your phone monotone and make it grey. There are things that can be done. It's helpful thinking of a train having to slow down. I'm glad that analogy works. You know what? I actually might make it into a little illustration. The next thing is to make sure you have network and support strategies. Are there people in your life you can actually go to speak about this? Like everyone coming here today, yay, that is a support network. Make sure you have people in your life that you can talk to. Not everyone is always going to understand. This is why we use analogies and things that can help bring people to life. I'm going to finish on this quote. For the high jumper to reach her personal best, she must first crouch down and get very low. What this is saying is that in order to be successful, we need to be able to get through the challenges, the low times first. I think while those with ADHD do have additional challenges, we are far more resilient with stronger perseverance than our neurotypical peers. So when we talk about the benefits of ADHD, we aren't dismissing challenges. We are saying those challenges weren't for nothing. That is the angle we like to focus on. Anyway, we're done, everyone. If successful, we hopefully learned a little bit about what psychology is. We did a little bit about empathy, and I loved your analogies, by the way. I'll be stealing some of them. We talked about resilience and how we can keep moving forward. We talked about the workplace, different strategies, a little bit about self-care. No, you are not alone. About 1 in 4 people out of 100 have ADHD. So even though it can feel very isolating sometimes, know that you are definitely not alone. If you liked today and you thought, I wish I could watch this again or watch some others, go on our YouTube channel, check them out. We've got loads of videos. If you just go on our YouTube at Exceptional Individuals and type in ADHD, you'll see we've got the science of ADHD, ADHD, the future of ADHD medication, ADHD in the workplace, ADHD drugs, addiction. We have loads of them. Do check them out. Subscribe, of course. We've got workplace needs assessment. If you're in the workplace with ADHD and you want support, contact us. We can get equipment, mentoring, coaching. There are so many things we can do. Just go on our website, go for employers or employees, go for workplace needs assessments. You can find out all the useful information there. Our next webinar is on autism versus dyslexia. You might think these are completely different, but are they? Because we often talk about the overlap and the similarities. We're going to be seeing what makes autism different from dyslexia. Also, what makes them similar. How do they relate and how do they not relate? Why are they co-occurring? Why are you more likely to have one than the other? Does one impact life more severely? Is one more common? These are all the type of things we're going to be looking at. Here's our contact information if you want to reach out. Thanks everyone for all the lovely comments and feedback. Is there still an ADHD employment agency? Yep, part of what we do actually. Thanks so much for coming, Blake. It's been lovely having you. Yeah, actually, I would love to do a big shout out to our interns, Daniela and Blake. It's been absolutely great having you. Your input has been really valuable. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next Thursday. Have a lovely day. Enjoy the sunshine if you're in the UK. Cheers.